What is going on, everyone? Today I'm going to be going over the most common Call of Duty Zombies misconceptions. And what I mean by this is things I constantly hear uttered in the community, whether it's through Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, whatever, things I've been hearing over the past few years that I just extremely disagree with. And I even would go as far as to say some of these things are just built upon faulty arguments that I just personally disagree with and don't think are really all that valid. I would love to hear you guys argue with me in the comment section down below, so if you disagree with anything I say here, definitely just go for it in the comments. Let's get to it. First of all, there's this sentiment that Black Ops 4 Zombies is one of the most complicated and least casual friendly zombies experiences of all time. And this one, I disagree with completely. I actually think Black Ops 4 Zombies is one of the most casual friendly, while still retaining a lot of elements for hardcore fans, such as the Easter eggs. Of course, the Easter eggs are very complicated, but when you look at the rest of the game, it's actually extremely casual friendly. We should go over what a casual versus a hardcore player really is. Obviously, it's not a black and white thing. There's a whole spectrum between being a more casual player to a more hardcore player, and of course, it could be different depending on the individual game you're playing. You could be a very casual player for one game, but a very hardcore player for another game. But when it comes to Call of Duty Zombies, for me, I would say if you're more casual, you're probably not talking about zombies online. You're also probably not putting a lot of hours into the game, whereas a hardcore player is more likely to be talking about the game online and also is putting a lot more hours into the game, and they just overall take it more seriously. Let's go a little more in depth with this. So first of all, most of the wonder weapons are just straight up in the box in Black Ops 4 Zombies, which was not the case in Black Ops 3 Zombies, where a lot of the wonder weapons you had to actually do a quest to unlock them. Of course, Garrote Crovy and Revelations changed that, but most of those maps you did have to do something in order to get the wonder weapons. Black Ops 4 came around, and majority of the wonder weapons are available straight up through the box. Of course, there are a couple smaller instances where, yes, there's some wonder weapons like the gauntlets on Ancient Evil where, yes, you have to do a quest to get them, but even then, it's a very simple quest that honestly is very solvable without a guide. You don't really need a guide to do a lot of these different quests. Some of the upgrade quests, though, for example, for the Alistair's Folly on Dead of the Night, that does maybe require a little bit more work, and maybe a casual player won't be able to figure that out, but at least the base weapon itself, they're gonna be able to solve that very simply. And for majority of the wonder weapons, yes, they're just straight up in the box. The Death of Orion on 9 is in the mystery box. You can do a side quest for it, but it is also in the mystery box. The Kraken on Voyage of Despair is in the mystery box. There's a Blundergat on Blood of the Dead. The classified Winter's Howl, of course, is in the box. Then, of course, you have Alpha Omega with the Reagan Mark II. Now, of course, the variants of it you have to craft and do a little quest for, but regardless, you still get the Mark II itself in the box. And then you go to Togger Toten, and you have all the wonder weapons available in the box as well. So that is definitely casual friendly. You don't have to do quests for majority of these wonder weapons. And when you really think about it, the best weapon in the game is literally a Helion Salvo, which is in the box. So there's really no reason a casual shouldn't be able to get to a decently high round, even without knowing how to get some of these wonder weapons that I've discussed before. But overall, most of the wonder weapons, yes, they are available in the box. Then when we talk about Pack-a-Punch quests, I wouldn't say any Pack-a-Punch quest in Zombies history is like that bad. There's only maybe one or two exceptions where, yes, the casual's probably not gonna be able to figure that out. But when you actually look at Black Ops 4, they're all very simple. Like, there's not a single one here that I feel like is too complicated. The most complicated one is probably Dead of the Night, but even then, you can solve that without a guide just fine. But you look at something like 9, all you gotta do is press 4 buttons around the map. It's pretty much as simple as that. Yes, those 4 buttons also require you to kill a couple bosses, but they're easy to take down. Like, you shouldn't be able to not do that just because you don't have a guide. It's not that hard. Voyage of Despair, again, you're pressing 4 buttons around the map. That's not too complicated. Classified, you're just picking up 3 pieces around the map and then crafting it and then putting it in the little area downstairs. Maybe you might take a little bit longer to figure that out just by finding the pieces for it, but part locations are not that hard to find, let's be honest here. Blood of the Dead, maybe is a more complicated one in terms of like just not knowing how to do it the first time, but once you learn that you can suck souls and then zap things, it's pretty obvious that you should probably zap things that look like the little panels from Mob of the Dead. So just do the same thing here, but with the shield, and if you do that to where the Pack-a-Punch location is, boom, you have Pack-a-Punch. Like, that's not too complicated. Ancient Evil, you literally just use your specialist weapon on 2 different cages, and that's it. Alpha Omega, you just, again, 4 buttons, and then you have to do a little lockdown, and boom, you have Pack-a-Punch. Togger Toten, you pick up a rock, and you place it on something, and boom, you have Pack-a-Punch. Like, these aren't complicated Pack-a-Punch quests, and so people saying, oh, they're complicated. No, they're not. You do not need guides for any of these. They're easy to figure out. just do a little bit of searching. Like I said, Dead of the Night probably takes the longest just because there's a couple of different part locations for like one of the crystal quests, but it's really not that hard to figure out, and it's definitely not complicated when you've done it multiple times already. And the core gameplay itself is very easy. It's actually one of the easiest Call of Duty Zombies experiences of all time. You literally have a specialist weapon with you at all times. If you get cornered by zombies, just pull it out, you're gonna be safe. It's actually a big, concern a lot of people have with the game. Sometimes it's a little too easy, but that's one of the reasons why it's very casual friendly. It's very hard to die, especially on the early rounds in Black Ops 4. So there's just so many elements to this game that I don't really understand why people don't consider it casual friendly, because it really is. Yes, when you start talking about Easter eggs, those are more hardcore, but Easter eggs have always been very hardcore. They've never been something that casuals usually do, and that kind of harkens back to the original idea of casuals. Like, they're just not going to put a lot of hours into the game in the first place, so expecting them to do a bunch of Easter eggs, they don't usually do them. Even in Cold War, even with them being a lot easier, most casuals are still not doing the main Easter eggs. Which brings me to my next point. Even if someone found the Pack-a-Punch quests to be very complicated, they didn't want to try to even solve it in the first place, or maybe they didn't want to look for the shield pieces, or maybe they just don't like having a bunch of part locations in general, or maybe they want wonder weapons always in the box and they don't want to have to, worry about the RNG of getting it. You can literally play a mode called Custom Mutations where you can make the game however you want it to be. The only caveat to that is that you can't do Easter eggs. But if you're a very casual player who doesn't care about Easter eggs in the first place, then why would it matter? If you just want to jump in the mode to just kill zombies and that's all you want to do, you want to, play the game like you're back in World at War or Black Ops 1 where it's very bare bones, you're just kind of going around killing zombies, you're not worrying about Easter eggs, you're not worrying about leveling up your guns and all that, Custom Mutations is perfect for you. And I understand why a lot of people don't even know what this is, because it doesn't really present itself as a very, easy to find feature. A lot of casuals don't even know Custom Mutations exists. Is that Treyarch's fault? Probably. They should have been a little more clear on what that is, maybe advertised it more, maybe actually just designed a classic mode where it lets you just kind of play zombies where everything's already unlocked, and it's more of like a, survival-esque version of the actual maps itself, which is basically what you can make the maps yourself. It's just you have to go in and do that manually. And like I said, casuals probably aren't going to do that. But generally speaking, is it there? Is it available? Yes. Therefore, yes, a big part of this game is very casual friendly. There's even a tutorial mode, for Christ's sake. The next misconception I want to talk about is something that's kind of similar to what I just talked about, and this has to do with Pack-a-Punch quests in general, not just in Black Ops 4, but really in any Call of Duty experience. There's this idea that, Pack-a-Punch quests got too complicated. There was too many games, especially with like Black Ops 3, Black Ops 2, like the end of Black Ops 2, Black Ops 4, Infinite Warfare, World War II. There's this big idea that these quests are too complicated. The casual player is not going to figure them out, and if you don't look up a guide, you will never be able to figure it out. I don't know what these people are smoking, because I cannot agree at all. Sure, are there some exceptions? Yeah, definitely. For example, Shaolin Shuffle, there's one part location under Juggernog. You have to go prone under Juggernog and hold X for this coin that allows you to open up the Pack-a-Punch room. Obviously, that's a very big exception, because yes, I don't think anybody's going to solve that without a guide. Who's actually going to think to hold X under Juggernog? Nobody's going to think to do that. So that one I completely understand as being a poorly, designed step. But once you learn that step, you're never going to forget it. Like, that's the most important thing here, is a lot of people don't realize that once you learn it, you never have to look it up again. I'm never going to forget that coin's under Juggernog. Why would I ever forget that? You'd have to have the worst memory of all time to forget some simple location such as a coin under Juggernog. Yes, is it stupidly designed for the first time you're playing it? Yes, but once you figure that out, it's really no big deal. But most Pack-a-Punch quests are not like that. Most of them are very simple to figure out without a guide. You can figure them out. There's, again, some exceptions maybe, but even then it's like, okay, yeah, maybe a guide will help you. Maybe it'll take a little bit longer if you don't use a guide, but it doesn't mean you need to use a guide. Just because it takes you maybe 2 or 3 hours, maybe a couple games to figure out how to get Pack-a-Punch, that doesn't mean you had to use a guide to do it. No, you just gave up too early. You gave up on Shadows of Evil. Shadows of Evil is the best example for it, because everyone talks about how hard Shadows of Evil is to get Pack-a-Punch. No, it is not, bro. You're just not trying. You don't care to try. You don't play zombies for that, and that's fine. If you don't want to play zombies to look around and try to figure things out, that's cool. But I mean, that doesn't mean it was unsolvable. You just didn't care to try. That's as simple as that. There's literally giant flashing red lights on the things you're supposed to zap, smash, or grapple with Shadows of Evil, and it has a giant logo symbol on it. It tells you in the beginning of the game what you're supposed to do. Just look around the place, use beast mode, look around, you will figure out what to do, and then eventually it becomes muscle memory. Like when I play Shadows of Evil, it's quite literally muscle memory now, the exact paths I go every time I use beast mode. So that's what happens over time. There's a learning curve there, which is actually part of what makes Shadows of Evil so much fun, is that learning curve. It just becomes muscle memory, and it's really rewarding when you have that muscle memory and you just immediately do things right away. But your first few times playing it, it wasn't like that. You were actually trying to solve it, and trying to solve it is fun. I enjoy doing that. And it's not really like a rare thing for PaP Quests either. Like sometimes, yeah, you got to look around a little bit. Even go back to Ascension. I remember the first time I played that map, I did the landers. That was pretty obvious, but I didn't know what to press next. I didn't know what button to press next. I didn't know what I was supposed to do after doing the 3 landers. And it took me a while to find that it was actually in that power room. Like it was all the way up there that I had to go back there and hold X on that thing to launch it. It took me a while to figure that out. And it probably did for a lot of other people, but that actual process of trying to figure that out was kind of fun. And I actually like how more in depth it became in these later maps. It's not unsolvable. It just might take some time to learn. That doesn't make it unsolvable though. And then some maps, it's literally just pressing a few buttons. Look at Horizon Rock. You literally just hold X on 2 different things and you have Pack-a-Punch. Like, how much easier can it possibly get than that? The next misconception I have is one that kind of relates to the whole casual versus hardcore argument, and it has to do with Cold War zombies. And this misconception is that people believe Cold War zombies is very popular and well loved because of the more casual friendly gameplay mechanics. Now, I'm not denying that those gameplay mechanics definitely do have some level of impact on how popular the mode was, but I just don't think it's this significant difference compared to what a lot of people think. In my opinion, what made Cold War Zombies so popular has to do with actually quite a lot of different reasons that have nothing to do with the gameplay mechanics. And let's go into those reasons right now. First of all, I think one of the biggest things is just the fact that Cold War itself sold very well. I think a lot of people forget that Zombies is attached to a larger game. You can't buy Zombies separately. You can't just buy the product of Zombies. Anybody who's buying the game is buying the complete package. And majority of players, vast majority, are not buying it for Zombies. Majority of people are buying it for campaign and multiplayer. As much as I love Zombies and the Zombies community is there and is pretty big, it's definitely not the most significant part of the Call of Duty franchise. Most people are looking at the campaign trailers, they're looking at the multiplayer stuff, and that is what they're buying it for. The trailers for campaign and multiplayer have more views than the Zombies trailers. So that's just what people saw first and what they probably first thought of. Even the, poster itself, it's always got actual marketing for campaign and multiplayer above anything else. Zombies is kind of just considered the side mode. So of course, if the rest of the game does better, then Zombies will do better as well. And Cold War itself, although, the campaign and multiplayer, they're not the most beloved of all time, but they were definitely hyped up more than like Black Ops 3 or 4 were. And I don't know why exactly. It could be maybe because of the setting itself. A lot of people weren't a fan of the futuristic setting of Black Ops 3 and 4, which is one of the reasons those games didn't have as much excitement as something like Black Ops Cold War did. Even if Black Ops 3 did have a lot of love, don't get me wrong, but it had a lot of casuals kind of not being interested because of that setting. Whereas Black Ops Cold War was advertised as, we're going back to the Cold War, we're going back to Black Ops 1, it's basically a direct sequel to Black Ops 1, Woods and Mason are returning. Like, there was so much hype around that game that of course it was going to get more sales, and then on top of that, you had the Zombies experience. So of course, all these people who were buying it for campaign and multiplayer can now check out Zombies as well, and they'll probably get into it. They probably didn't even play Black Ops 3 or 4, maybe they did, maybe they tried it out later, but in general, they probably didn't experience a lot of the other games. They were just kind of like, oh, the Call of Duty's back to how it was in 2010. I'm going to go check it out. And then they happened to check out the Zombies as well. And also, you got to take into account the pandemic. This was during the pandemic where everyone was at home doing pretty much nothing. So of course, they were going to have a lot more time to play video games, and that included Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War Zombies. And then you had Warzone as well, which just made the Call of Duty franchise overall a lot more popular. And that it would then include any other mode. If Warzone's getting really popular, people are going to be more convinced to probably want to check out the other modes in the recent Call of Duty games. There was also the camo grinds and weapon level grinds of Cold War Zombies, and of course they did have those in Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, Infinite Warfare, and those games, but it wasn't as expansive, it wasn't as large. I mean, here you had like over 70 levels on some guns to level up, and of course you can use these weapons in Warzone multiplayer. So a lot of people from Warzone multiplayer used Cold War Zombies to just grind weapons out because it was a lot easier to grind them in there than it was to grind them in Warzone multiplayer. And then of course the camos, you can get really cool camos and then use them in multiplayer and Warzone. So again, it just gave people more reasons to play. It doesn't have anything to do with the actual gameplay of the game. It's more so just a bunch of these extra quality of life features. You also had the battle pass you can level up in zombies here. You had crossplay for the first time ever in zombies, and you also had free DLC for the first time ever in zombies. So if you weren't buying the DLC, you were getting a game that had a lot more content to it. So of course you were going to play it more frequently than players would have before, because a lot of players before didn't even buy DLC, but now they had a bunch of DLC updates. Even if it wasn't nearly as much content as you would get maybe in some prior Call of Duty games, it was still free content, and that made people eat it up, and they were just playing zombies a lot because of that. So my main point here is that you can basically replace Black Ops Cold War with multiple other zombies experiences, and I think it would be just as popular, or at least close to how popular Cold War Zombies was. So I don't think we have to have these gameplay mechanics going forward in every single game just to keep the popularity going. I do think it would retain that popularity as long as you have all those other quality of life features and just all of those other, external factors that just happen to go into place to making Cold War Zombies as popular as it was. Next thing I want to talk about is probably one of the most frustrating misconceptions I constantly hear in the zombies community, and this is that zombies reusing assets is a very normal thing. It happens all the time, and you should not complain about it when it happens today, because it always happens. This one drives me insane, because on the surface, yes, of course, zombies always reuses assets from campaign and multiplayer, and even sometimes from prior zombies games. Of course, that always happens, but the severity at which they reuse assets changes drastically from game to game, and it's been a much bigger problem within the past couple titles from Cold War, Vanguard, and now in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies. It's way more frequent now than it's ever been from, Black Ops 2 to Black Ops 4. That entire period of time was not heavily reusing assets. And you always have that one smartass who jumps in the comments and is like, oh, well, what about World at War? They reuse maps from multiplayer for their zombies experiences. It's like, how is that a decent comparison whatsoever? That game came out 16 years ago. 16 years. That was the first zombies experience of all time. Why should our standards for the mode be the same as a game that came out 16 years ago? That is insane to me. And yes, Black Ops 1 reused some assets from campaign for like 1 or 2 maps. It was nothing crazy though. It was like Ascension has some assets from multiplayer, but like it's really nothing major. And then you have 5 obviously was in campaign. But the majority of those other maps, they're completely original. Like sure, there's some assets here and there, but the map itself, the location is completely original. Then Black Ops 2, again, the most original zombies has ever been. Black Ops 3, same thing. There's maybe some assets reused here and there, like the Garad Crovey, Pack-a-Punch room, of course, was from campaign, but like, again, that's just one little thing. The entirety of the map is obviously a lot more original. Black Ops 4, same thing. I know they did a lot of remakes and reimaginings, and Revelations technically did that too, but in general, majority of the content in that game was original stuff, originally made for the game. Then you get to Cold War, and that's when shit changes, and like most of the game is reused assets from multiplayer, from campaign, and it's just nowadays it's like Warzone is just literally the entire Warzone map is the Modern Warfare 3 map. It's so many reused assets nowadays, and whenever somebody says, oh, they did it back in World of War, so why didn't you complain back then? Because that was 16 years ago. Of course I didn't complain 16 fucking years ago. I was an 8-year-old boy. That's like if a new Call of Duty multiplayer comes out next year and it only has 3 kill streaks in the entire game, and rightfully so, a lot of people would complain about that and say, well, why is there only 3 kill streaks in this game? Usually we have a lot more kill streaks. And then some smartass goes, well, Call of Duty 4 and World at War only had 3 kill streaks, so why didn't you complain back then? It's like, bro, what are you talking about, man? Like, come on. A better argument about reuse assets would simply be it's just saving the developers time, and obviously if the games are rushed, it's probably going to happen. Like, I understand that completely, and that's a decent argument. But when it comes to, how it affects the game, whether it's negative or positive, I think, arguing that it happened before, so we shouldn't complain now, just doesn't make any sense, and to me is a massive misconception. Because when you really look at it, majority of zombies content throughout time, vast majority, has been original content. So nowadays, us getting majority of the stuff being, reused assets is obviously a much bigger deal. The next misconception I have is something that I've been hearing recently more than anything after Modern Warfare 3 Zombies came out, and this is that round-based zombies is just running around in circles shooting zombies endlessly. There's a lot of people who have this misconception about round-based zombies. They fully believe that the zombies experience within round-based maps is very repetitive and it's the same thing every game of just going around in circles shooting zombies, and that's all you can do. There are so many people, especially a lot of the new Outbreak fans and a lot of the fans of Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, and I really do feel like these players either just haven't really engaged with round-based content enough to really see what you can actually do on those maps, or they just haven't played since Black Ops 1. There was literally a Twitter interaction I had with someone once who was trying to tell me how round-based zombies is just, there's nothing to it, like it's very bare bones, there's never anything. And then he tells me that he hasn't played since Black Ops 1 in 2010. And I'm like, well, bro, you're judging a whole entire franchise worth of content based on its first 2 entries when there's like 11 total zombies modes. It's like, that doesn't really make sense, man. There are plenty of things to do with round-based zombies. Of course, you can just play casually if you want. You can do the whole running around circles shooting zombies. I know a lot of people don't like that and think it's repetitive, myself included. I don't really like high rounds because of that. I do think high rounds can get kind of repetitive, but it still is an option if you want to do that. You can do Easter eggs, the main Easter eggs, or side Easter eggs. There's plenty of Easter egg quests, side Easter egg quests, plenty of stuff throughout all of zombies history. Of course, if you stick to just like a couple maps, then you might get bored of it quicker. But if you actually play all the maps and you go around to different games, there's going to be a lot more content there. And for myself, you know, there's so many Easter eggs I can do. Like right now, I can choose to play 50 different Easter eggs practically just based on how much content there is out there. And then if you include custom zombies, it's even more. It's like probably hundreds of thousands of maps out there. You can get into speedrunning or just doing fun challenges that you either create yourself or do with friends. There's so many options. And there's a bunch of different side modes. There's, you know, Grief, Rush, and Gauntlet from Black Ops 4. There's obviously the Dead Ops arcade modes. There's just so many different things to do in zombies that I don't understand why people just, you know, they kind of simplify it down to just being running around in circles shooting zombies all day. It's really a lot more than that. And the last misconception I have here is simply that zombies every year leads to community fatigue. And I've mentioned this multiple times. I really don't feel like that's the case. I feel like the reason people get fatigued is when they don't enjoy the modes, but just the very idea of having a lot of zombies content, I don't think that's going to fatigue players the way a lot of people say. The same thing is said about Marvel movies. Everyone's talking about Marvel fatigue, Marvel movie fatigue. There's too much Marvel content. It's not that there's too much content. It's just that a lot of the content you don't like. And if you don't like the content, you're gonna have a problem with it and you're gonna start to feel fatigued by it. But if you liked every single movie and every single show that Marvel was putting out, you would never talk about fatigue. The same thing goes for Call of Duty Zombies. And that's all I really have to say for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I will see you guys all in my next one. Peace out.